Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Jams and Tea Podcast's 2021 lists of 2021. We did our worst songs of the year list already, and now you know what fucking time it is. It's time to do the worst albums of the year, which is an interesting... Tyler
gone.
died. He died. Oh, shit.
In the arms of the angel.
We should say that kind of like our songs list this year, we didn't really take an initiative to review many bad records. In fact, I would say that even though we had half as much chances episode-wise when we started the podcast in 2020, we reviewed far more terrible albums. So we've gone out of our way in some instances. Our list has more variety this time. We have a little bit more things to spice everything up. So without further ado, let's fucking go.
Let's go. So yeah, as Jake's basically said, this was a pretty good year for music. So, you know, it's hard for us to get too vitriolic at times, but I think that we'll find the energy within ourselves in this video. And I know that I certainly am not going to struggle with the first album on our list, which is...
Here we go.
I don't know what compelled me to listen to this, beyond just wanting to make sure that the crumbs of the worst shit of the year were truly inspected before we did this video. And never let it be said that I don't suffer for my art. I make it a point to. And look, maybe some of you see that as unnecessary. Maybe some of you feel pity for me in doing that. And that's entirely fair. And it will not surprise, nor will it delight you to learn that I've listened to this album 3 times in full now. I
certainly pity you.
I don't have reasons. I don't have logic in my life. I certainly don't have logic in my life. I stopped listening to him at the end of last year. But AJR. So I'm told by reliable sources, this is AJR's best album. It's the only AJR record I have heard today, although I've heard some of their songs, you know, inescapably in the fabric of our hell world existence.
Against my will.
Yeah. But I did hear one of the singles...
Everything I know about AJR is against my will.
Exactly. But I did hear one of the singles on this record ahead of listening to the record because I think it was reasonably big. And I don't know, maybe some of you have heard it too. The song Bang, which is one of the most anonymous songs AJR have ever made, I think, which is quite impressive for this band. And the idea of like, so there's this hilarious self-own like right in the core of the song, which is like, you know, raise your hands, everybody, pretend you know the song, everybody. And it's like he outwardly just being like, you know, people don't fucking know who we are. People don't fucking care who we are. We're anonymous. We're factory music. We are anodyne synthesized noise. That's fine. They're happy to embrace that. The critique that's always been thrown at AJR's way is that they are grown men making music that sounds like children, that makes them sound like children, essentially, where they infantilize themselves, where they kind of speak to their audience like children, where essentially they appear to target children as their kind of audience. And that's a critique that's been lobbed their way in the past. And this, I don't know if any of the Met brothers have gone as far as to say this outright, but I believe this to be intended to be the album where the Met brothers grow up, where the Met brothers mature, where they finally start acting like adults and, more pertinently, discussing adult topics. And so you rightfully, of course, have a bunch of songs that are from the perspective of a child still. And you have really facile attempts at broadening the scope of who this music appeals to and the kind of stories that it tries to tell. And here's a theme that is not going to be the last time this comes up today. Huge bombastic pop band make bright sunny, chirpy, cheery songs about being really fucking sad. And that contrast is something we're supposed to go, wow, these are real artists. These guys are troubled. These guys are, what if the music is happy, but the lyrics are sad?
Truly the successors to Outkast.
It's textureless. That's the cool thing about it. It's textureless. There's no texture on this record, absolutely none whatsoever. You have songs like Ordinary-ish People featuring, of all people, the Blue Man Group on this track. And you have these horns that you fucking heard me. I don't have an explanation for you. I don't
how does that even
I don't make the rules of this world that we live in. But you have a song like Ordinary-ish People, which has the most, how to describe them? Like they sound like they're horns that sound like they're being played through like a trumpet or a saxophone that has been shrunk with a shrink ray to the size of a little child's hand, and they're playing it. Like it sounds so like tinny and so like processed and so like completely just buried in walls of production that it barely registers as a brass instrument or as trying to be a brass instrument. You have the most irritating hooks of the year. You have the song Humpty Dumpty, which, let me fucking get the lyrics up here. I mean, you can imagine how this goes. This is one of the most annoying songs AJR have ever made, which is really saying something. You have this hook where when Humpty Dumpty went Humpty Dumpty went Humpty Dumpty went down, like the Humpty Dumpty is looped over and over and over again, and then it turns into this song about like, you know, whenever you're struggling, you just got to stand up and brush yourself off and get on with it. And it's this weird sort of like, don't pity me, but also like give me attention sort of song.
Good job growing up, guys.
Yeah, and there's this weird moments where AJR like try to get like sort of dark, like I'm a smile right through it, but I'll scream when no one's around. And it's like that, and like that's what I mean with the whole fucking like put on a happy face type of shit that they're doing here.
An album about psychosis. Great.
I mean, that's kind of what it induces when you have to spend your time listening to it. You have the song The Trick, which opens with the hot bars. I've got a dog and my dog can dance, just not in public and not with my friends. Todd in the Shadows, not a rhyme button, please. Need that right there. I've got a girl and she's 28. Now I'm the coolest guy in all of 8th grade. Thank you. I too am looking forward to licorice pizza. Like, okay. So there's other passages on the song. I went to France and danced in the rain and told you all about it on our first date. My dad doesn't lie, so you can't meet my dad because you fell in love with the me that went to France.
What?
There's but my favorite lyrical moment on this record, which is so brain dead that I had to take a minute the first time I heard it and just turn the album off and go for a walk, is the song World's Smallest Violin, which opens with the incredible indelible bar. My granddad fought in World War II. He was such a noble dude.
Really?
Yeah! Number 9 on our list is
Pump it up into me, please daddy, please daddy.
I guess it would appear at this point that this band is just going in cycles of like, we're going to be really good and then we're going to blow it. But don't worry, we're going to come back with something that everybody loves. And I mean, the first time that happened really was Pinkerton. That was them blowing it. And then, you know, everybody turned around on that one eventually and revisited it. But the idea was like, the Green album was their comeback album where they would make the crowd-pleasing thing that everybody loved. And then they did that, and then they sucked. But it's okay because they made their comeback album again with the one that the bear thing on it. You know,
everything will be all right in the end.
Yeah, that one. And then they came back with that one, and then they had the White album after that. and that was like Maladroit to Everything Will Be All Right's Green album. And then we're finally back at the Ratitude era of this cycle with Van Weezer. So I don't even feel compelled to describe how this is bad anymore. It's literally it's Van Weezer. It's Weezer doing hair metal. Kill me. End my life.
But like, this is the thing. That was kind of the conceit, but very little of Van Weezer, I feel, really follows through on that. Even what through the lens of Weezer trying to do that. Like much of it is just kind of like, oh, we've turned our amps up a bit more than usual, and we're doing some affectations that we don't usually do.
Just like the fucking Black album. It's the same shit. The reason Morgan can't elaborate is because it's the same fucking album as they've been making for the last 15 years.
Weezer have always operated with this, as Morgan's kind of suggested already, have always operated with this dynamic of one for you, one for us. And sometimes it's two for you, two for us. And sometimes it's one for you, two for us. And sometimes it's two for you, one for us, or whatever. But it's like, yeah, Blue Album, crowd pleaser. They make a record that goes down really, really well. Pinkerton, they decide, let's not do what people want. Green Album, they decide, let's not do what people want in a different way. Maladroit, that's the album where famously they get a lot of input from their fans on demos and song lyrics and all sorts of things and song titles and things like that. So that's an album for the fans. Make Believe, fuck you. We're going to do what we want again. We're going to be the biggest band in the world. Red Album, I know you guys probably don't see it that way, but I see that record as Weezer trying to make a record that appeases to their fans while also trying to continue their pop streak.
That's what it is.
Gratitude, fuck all that. Let's Lil Wayne on a track. Let's do it.
Weezer and Wheezy.
Hurley, we're back to basics. Everything will be all right in the end. We're back to basics, but better this time. White Album, we're actually trying, I think. And then Pacific Daydream, gotcha, you suckers. And then Black Album. What was so funny about following Weezer over the last 2 years is like, even after Pacific Daydream, they were talking about how the Black Album was going to be hot shit, right? It's going to, and even then, I think that the legend of Van Weezer, the idea, the specter, the haunting specter of communism, sorry, the haunting specter of Van Weezer has loomed over Weezer's, imminent future for the last few years. Like it's this project, this hard rock pastiche thing that's super in Rivers' wheelhouse, right? Like he's based a whole career on like idol worship in some form or another. And so we finally get it. And just like with the Black Album, it's such a deflation. Like it's such a nothing album. It's such a, like, here's the gimmick and here's a few little like tastes of the gimmick. And here's us tributing Ozzy Osbourne or whatever with Blue Dream. That's a generous reading if you want. It's obviously a copy of the riff, and they're not like trying to hide that they're doing that, but it's also at the same time like I have no reason to listen to this. Like I have no reason to engage with
we've
this.
reached the point where the point in the cycle that Weezer are at is indistinguishable. It's like, is Van Weezer and OK Human the good album that everyone's supposed to like? Is it the bad album? I don't know anymore.
Well, I certainly don't know with Van Weezer, but OK Human's a more interesting case maybe, because that was clearly that's Weezer's quarantine album, and we're going to talk about a fuckload of those. We've already started talking about them.
Makes my colon shrivel up.
And that, it's all right. It's decent. Has a couple of really good songs on it. It was heralded as a massive return to form from people who I think were really suckered in with the desire to want to like Weezer again. And look, I can relate.
Never
to that.
heard Bittersweet Symphony before.
I can relate. I can relate to it genuinely.
Fool me once. Shame on you. Fool me twice. You can't get fooled again.
These songs exist for tweets. They exist for headlines. They exist for bites, nuggets of attention. That's the mode Weezer operate in now. OK Humor exists for a cool concept, not for a meaningful set of songs. It exists because, Weezer made an album with only strings. That's the gimmick. Weezer made an album where they pastiche, hard rock bands and pay tribute to fucking Poison or whoever. Like, that's the gimmick. Weezer making
songs. Alu Gobi.
Weezer are currently working on a 4-album season song cycle about spring, summer, winter, dread. I don't want to get older, whatever it is. This is the mode Weezer exists in now. It's no longer even one for us, one for them like it used to be. It's gimmick. What's the next gimmick that I, Rivers Cuomo, can sell? And how can I make my band sound as much like MIDI instruments as possible in the process? And that's where we're at with Weezer in 2021.
The only MIDI we need is black MIDI.
So true. So true. All right. Oh, God.
Okay.
I just saw what's next. I've been dreading this.
I'm problematic.
This might be contentious because a lot of people do genuinely like this and the project, the multimedia work that goes with it. But Bo Burnham's Inside is my least favorite piece of media of 2021. Pretty comfortably, I would say. And it's not because I hate Bo Burnham. I don't hate Bo Burnham, actually. I, like many people, have found him quite amusing in the past. I think that he's a genuinely smart guy who has a lot of sort of self-awareness about his place in internet culture and the sort of stuff that he's inspired and the way he was kind of on the ground floor in a lot of ways for a lot of what internet comedy has come to be, and the sort of megalomaniacal monster that internet comedy has kind of evolved into beyond him. And this is him sort of kind of reckoning with the kind of internet comedian he once was and the way the internet operates now, and how he can interact with that, and how he is both, intertwined as an unmistakable part of the fabric of the internet now, but also like he's kind of outgrown it and he is no longer the cheery, chirpy kid that he was when he was doing his most popular initial comedy. And so, look, I can respect and appreciate all of these aspects of the subtext and context and background of Inside. Like, I get it. And I think there's something to be said and probably a really interesting piece to be written about how this film/album approaches that. But I don't want to get into any of it. The way I feel about this is actually really not far off how Jake felt about what Jake said when he voiced his feelings on Personal Shopper by Steven Wilson, except that I have slightly less of a history with the artist in question. But it's the same level of feeling condescended to. It's the same level of feeling subjected to a single artist's wallowing for an extended period of time. And it's even more baffling because as a result of that, at least, generally people looked at Personal Shopper and said, this is sticks. What is this, dude? Like, that's not, no one was putting that on their best songs of the year list. No one's putting the Future Bites on their best albums of the year list. But a lot of people have heralded Bo Burnham's Inside as a kind of like masterpiece for the 2021 post-COVID internet age. I mean, how fucking disgusting is the term post-COVID that I even have to say that? And yet it's how this is all being contextualized. We've had so much quarantine art. We're not even done fucking talking about it. I wish we fucking were. But this is kind of the apotheosis of quarantine art, because at least culturally, this is the piece of quarantine art that has taken up the most kind of suction from the world. Like, it's had the most attention, it's had the most scrutiny, it's had the most celebration. It's divided audiences all around. And I don't feel like I can offer a new or particularly insightful take on why I think it sucks. But what it is one thing I will say, and I feel like this is something we've voiced in the past before as well, is like, if you're going to make art that reckons with how you don't belong anymore in a particular cultural space, or how you represent a particular archetype, i.e. the young white man, singing about his grievances, if that's your whole shtick and you want to reckon with the fact that, you're kind of outdated now, you're kind of sucking air up, you're kind of not what we want to focus on, you're going to have a difficult time doing that and producing some piece of art that is A, meaningful, and B, that people genuinely give a shit about wanting to consume. Because just because you're self-aware about the fact that you are a white guy with an acoustic guitar and a piano making his living off of singing about how much he hates being alive and how much the internet sucks now. Just being self-aware about that doesn't make the music good. And that's really it. That's really all that it boils down to at the end of the day. There's a lot more I could critique about the film itself, but we're not discussing the film. The music itself is what is here. And Bo put the album out as its own thing, distinct from the special on Netflix. And you have 50 minutes of this man floundering on how to make music in 2021, how to continue his artistic identity in 2021, the time where what we need the least is more music about how life sucks from another white man who's struggling. And you have a song like Comedy, where he painfully reckons for 5 minutes about how the last thing the world needs is me chiming in and trying to make people laugh. And yet I'm going to do that anyway. But don't worry, I'm going to be conscious of how much everything sucks right now for all of us. And I'm going to make conscious satire about the state of the world. And I'm also going to make a really heart on sleeve representation of my suicidality during the quarantine. And that's the thing. I don't want to belittle Bo's genuine depression and suicidality and anxiety that he reckons with on this album. Genuine feelings. I mean, the song That Funny Feeling, which was covered by Phoebe Bridgers earlier this year, probably the best thing that's come out of all of this, even if I do find some of the lyrics genuinely eye-rolling for reasons that are true of a lot of this album. There's a heartfelt sentiment there about, you know, the specific and unique feeling of wanting to die in 2020 and 2021. But I don't need it to be sandwiched with songs about FaceTiming his mother and about sexting and about white women's Instagram, and it's so much music, which is literally just Bo reckoning with his own ego, Bo trying to shoot his own ego down, and Bo presenting his defiled, degraded ego to you like a dog with a dead bird in its mouth saying, I hope this is all right. That's what this is. The film is even worse because it's fucking 90 minutes of it. At least the music is only 50 minutes on the album. I'm not mad at Bo Burnham. I feel for him. I get that he's suffering. I'm not one of those people who thinks that, you know, suffering is invalid if you're a white man because you've had all this privilege, so you don't get to suffer. I'm sure that Bo's pain is real, and I don't feel that there's a hypocrisy about his pain here. What I think is he's tried to do something to channel the feeling of being inside and of being depressed and of being isolated and of being alone, and he's tried to do that while desperately saying, it's okay, guys, I get how weird it is coming from me. He's tried to infuse that spirit, that humor that he's had in previous specials like What and Make Happy. He's tried to modernize that. He's tried to make it more sad because we're living in sad times. And the result is just proof positive that Bo Burnham, and by Bo Burnham, I mean the artistic personality Bo Burnham as manifested in his specials, doesn't belong in 2021 anymore, doesn't fit in the world anymore. He needs to evolve in some way. He needs to move past the constant introspection through song that is just, we're saturated in that shit in the current media landscape, Bo. It's no longer unique, sharp, funny, insightful. It's just depressing. And it's not cathartic in any way. For me, anyway, I'm sure it probably is cathartic for some people out there. Good for you if it is. But this represents everything that is tiresome about self-aware singer-songwriters and self-aware comedians, for that matter, in the year 2021. And it's not to say you can't make good comedy that's rooted in your self-awareness or whatever. It's just to say that using that as a total crutch, like Bo does here, is... it's a mess. It's a recipe for a mess. It's a recipe for alienating large swaths of people and really only digging yourself deeper into this insular world that you have broadcast onto the screen. At the end of this album, Bo says, I decree to never go outside again. And whether he's being ironic there or whether he's kind of like making this grand, tragic statement about his depression overcoming him in the pandemic or not, you really just want him to do the opposite. Go outside. And I know that in the film he does do that meaningfully at the end of the movie, but it doesn't amount to anything. It doesn't feel significant. It doesn't feel like an arrival. It feels like stagnation. And yes, while stagnation may be the theme of the world in 2020 and 2021, it's not something we need to keep seeing in our art. Number 7 on our list.
Entertain like a fucking clown.
We've already talked about Personal Shopper in our Worst Songs of the Year video. But Morgan, I think, is well equipped to talk about the album a bit more broadly, why it's a bit more complicated than just the consumerist parable, or not even parable, but just kind of like postmodern mockery of that song. What is the concept of the Future Bites, Morgan? What is this album trying to do, and why does it fail?
It's weird because songs like Personal Shopper and Eminent Sleaze, and even a song I love like Man of the People, is just so mired in postmodern Roger Waters-esque mirrors of how politics, and particularly British politics at this point in time, operates. But it's also so inconsistent in that, and how it wants to portray that, because Man of the People is overflowing with empathy and like stark quiet beauty, and then Personal Shopper is everything that we said it was earlier. So the album itself is so non-committal and weak and strangely badly produced and mixed. I'm saying that about a Steven Wilson album, which it's been almost a year since this came out, and I'm not fully reckoned with that fact.
It is probably it's not the worst album of 2021, but I would say it's unquestionably the messiest. There's even though it has this concept essentially that is supposed to unify, it being a portrait of the modern world, a portrait of consumerism and its effects on people, the kind of dulling of emotions and of desire and ambition that the world kind of imbues upon you. But you have like a duality between songs like Man of the People, which, as you say, Morgan, kind of renders that more empathetically, and something like Eminent Sleaze, where he's almost trying to do a parody of the kind of archetype of celebrity, or even of his own sort of his fans' own musical expectations of him. Like, it's a strange set of conflicting ideas about how to execute this sort of satire, or this sort of concept, and these different executions that collide and crash into each other going at completely different directions make for like such a like a total car crash of an album where maybe you might have a few lucky survivors, but you have a lot of dead bodies.
The thing about this that's so goddamn frustrating is really that, like, I feel like even though this was technically last year, we sort of kicked off the year with the spirit of disappointment because of the Smashing Pumpkins. Morgan had one of the best segments of this entire podcast when he talked about Sear and Billy Corgan, and just the idea of what artists and fans expect from each other, and what can even be expected, and what can be delivered, and the kind of power that's held in that particular dynamic. And it's fascinating to explore that. And in that respect, I feel like we have all undergone a sort of transformation with an artist who means a lot to us throughout the course of the year. With August, it was memorably Hideaki Anno when we talked about the Evangelion movies. With me, it was Steven Wilson. And I am blessed with the fact that the Future Bites is thankfully not the absolute fucking dark night of the soul that Seer or Ava 4 are, because it's really not that bad. But like Morgan said, it makes it so much more complicated to be like, pound for pound. It's just like there are elements of this that don't infuriate me. There are elements of this that I don't hate. If I had to sit through this album again, I guess I would. But at the same time, it's an album that I dislike just as much as shit like that. Not because it proves that Steven Wilson is a fallible artist or is capable of making bad things. I've heard the first Porcupine Tree album. It's not good. He's not got a perfect track record by any means. But sweet and gentle Jesus, why does it have to be this? Why did it have to tackle this subject? Why did it have to do it at this particular time? It's thorny and ugly and garish, and the worst part about it is that I just, like, in a way that's separate from my music critical, I just want this out of my life. Like, I hate thinking about this album. It's like, oh yeah, I have to reckon with the fact that some parts of it are good and some parts just like, no, you know what, Brian, shut the fuck up and go listen to Deadwing. You get nothing out of this. I get nothing out of trying to parse through the good parts or the bad parts of this album. It is an album that evades all music discourse and criticism, and it's just like, there's nothing worthwhile in you. I want to ask August, how has this sat with you, the person who had no qualms about saying that this was a piece of shit from the outset? Because I envy you so deeply because of that, because that is such a beautifully uncomplicated stance to have that I really wish I shared.
I mean, I'll be honest, my life has been smooth sailing because I don't think about this album, quite honestly. It's like, yeah, it's just bad. I didn't like any of what it was going for, and
Real
that's
John
that.
Hamm Mad Men shit. I don't think about you at all.
Yeah. Well, something that I assume probably, August, you haven't thought about very much either, but that I hope you have a few more thoughts on, is the next album on our list,
Oh
number
boy,
6,
do I.
which is Typhoons, the Titanic new record from the cardboard rock masterminds Royal Blood themselves. Why don't you, August, give us the fucking whirlwind here on
Oh
what
boy,
the
boy,
boys are doing
Typhoons.
this time.
Typhoons. This is an album. It makes this album. I was very excited when I listened to it. The level of hype, the level of energy on here. It makes the first Death from Above 1979 album look like the most recent Death from Above 1979 album. And it makes the most recent Death from Above 1979 album look as bad as this, because this is fucking awful. Oh my God. This is just the loudest, fartiest rock album I've ever heard. It's so dead set on sounding like a studio is my biggest takeaway from it. It sounds so artificial, plasticky, and fake, all while they're doing these big riffs that just suck ass and aren't any fun to listen to. It's like they bended the will of the universe to make just the least interesting, most obnoxious rock album ever. I mean, we've got tracks on here like Boilermaker, which have hooks that feel like a needle being slowly inserted into your eyeball. And of course, we've got the title track, which is unlike your eyeball, it's a needle to between the tip of your fingernail and your finger. Those feelings of immense discomfort and pain are what this album sounds like, going on and pulsating in your ears. It is just such a foul, unpleasant experience by virtue of this need to be so in your face and epic. And you know, I there was so much online discourse about this being the better Royal Bloods. This was the improvement, and it's not. Let's be honest. This is the same shit they've been making. It's the same shit they will continue to make, and it's just substanceless. No, it's bad.
It's also probably good to put this in as a kind of stand-in for the new Death from Above 1979 record as well, which I don't think is quite as terrible as this. It has a
No,
couple of
No.
good songs on it,
That's
but
a
kind of
better album.
kind of represents
Yeah.
the same sort of thing of this kind of like this production habit that we're seeing. And I got to point fingers at fucking Josh Homme here because he produced.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And it's this weird, I don't get the appeal of it. I don't get where it's coming from. I don't like it. I would like it to stop. I did not invite it into my home. Where you produce these guitars, and I'm sure, Morgan, you've probably got opinions on this as the guitar nut. This desire to make these guitars sound as like wooden and like, I called them cardboard rock before, which I think is probably the best way of describing the guitar tones on this particular record. And that seemed to be evading a lot of these bands that want to do the fucking 2-minute balls to the wall, like real rock shit, but in a kind of alty lens as well. Like they seem to all favor this production style, which is just a total ear sore. Like it's catastrophically painful to listen to. Like the difference between the guitars on a record like this and a guitars on a record like the new Mastodon record, right, is the difference between a real guitar and a fucking black and white photograph of one. It's there's just nothing there to take away from, and it actively makes you feel either annoyed at the way in which this instrument has been made to sound, or just like you don't want to listen to a guitar for a while. Thank you very much. And both of those are negative outcomes.
What fucking idiot decided, hey, we should make this album sound like Queens of the Stone Age, but take out all the edge? I mean, literally, how
Well,
stupid.
that idiot was Josh Homme, so
Fucking exactly my fucking point.
Yeah, I think
you
And
should know
admittedly,
better.
he kind of did that with the villains. So
I don't look. I know I'm kinder to that album than most. This is so much fucking worse than that. So
undoubtedly.
much fucking worse.
Yeah, I think to be fair to Josh Homme, like he's probably not able to put a lot of his creative energy into these productions because he's so busy trying to fight this custody battle with his wife for being an estranged shit deadbeat dad. So I can kind of get why he's not really putting his full,
That's not an end of the year list if we don't make fun of somebody for being a bad father.
Speaking of butt rock, let's move on to
Ass
Nothing.
rock.
rock
an album
and
which
nothing but rock.
an album which represents something I've kind of already alluded to, which is these kind of big budget, larger than life, booming, bombastic pop bands getting really sad.
Only one of us will make it out alive, and it's not you!
You know, I really can't come after you too hard for your masochistic music listening tendencies, Tyler, because the way I came across this record was because I was literally out of my mind. I had not slept in 36 hours. I was in a car dealership and I was bored, and I saw this on Apple Music and was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm in the mood for some punishment. And I listened to it. And the reason, I don't even say like that's the masochistic part. The masochistic part was that I listened to this again afterwards because I was like, I listened to that in the worst state of mind possible. I felt like I was experiencing a fucking fever dream. I listened to it, and every second of it felt like a torture chamber. So I'm going to listen to this again with fresher ears, just so I can know and feel how bad this is, and know if I was correct or not before. And the lesson I've learned with this is that don't doubt yourself, because you're just going to put yourself through more pain. If anything, the album got worse because I was able to identify what about it sucked so much. And the thing with Imagine Dragons is that, like, the worst thing about this band, the worst fucking thing about Imagine Dragons is that they're fucking everywhere. everywhere. Car commercials, movie trailers, every retail establishment in the United States of America has played at least 2 singles from each of their albums, and you have you just never stop hearing them. I heard Thunder like 2 days ago, which, doesn't help when the songs themselves suck and you have to hear them all the time. And the thing is that this album notably hasn't been the runaway success that something like Evolve was. And then you had the album after that, which just sounded like hot fucking garbage. So naturally, they've pivoted stylistically to bravely make an album that sounds like nothing. And the reason I gotta say that this is the worst album I've listened to all year, and it's worse than something like the Royal Blood album, is because the Royal Blood album sounds bad, but it has an idea and makes it sound bad. So there is something there. There's nothing here. And don't take my word for it. Take the words of Dan Reynolds himself. And I quote, "I never fully comprehend thematically what the record is about." Period. He said this. He said this about music that he wrote and made. Music that he wrote and made about depression, suicide, and the death of a family member. He just didn't put much thought into it. And look, I'm not going to rag on this dude because clearly he's had a tough time. And not everybody is going to be, would you tell Picasso to sell his guitars? Nobody's going to come out to pussy painting Mozart. You're not going to be great at it. You will make sincere art that sucks shit. It happens. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Everything on here sounds, we've said it multiple, it sounds plastic. Listening to this is actively like it. When Tyler talked about Kid A, you talked about the end of the song, the national anthem, where the brass just explodes at the very end, and you went, I physically recoil. That's what every song on this album sounds like. It's like there's a feeling I get in my spine when I listen to a song like Monday, one of the worst songs I've heard all fucking year, which just, it sounds disgusting. It's so electronic, artificial garage band. It's a rock song with a fucking trap hi-hat in it. Stop this. When has this ever worked? When has this ever yielded a good result? And the vocal delivery of all these songs is like this dude doesn't even have the decency to do his loud, annoying believer voice. He's just, it's Mercury Act 1, like it's some fucking Coheed. Shut up. If you don't put thought into your music, don't make music.
I have listened to this as well twice. I will say I find it, I don't find it as easy to be mad at this as you do. It's a bad album, to be clear. I'm not quite as mad at it. It's tough because this is like an uncomfortably grief-stricken record. You look at a song like Wrecked, which is like he's just openly weeping about the death of his sister-in-law, and it's tough. Like if you were to sit down and just read those lyrics, it would be hard not to choke up. Dan Reynolds does fall into sentiment more often and cliche and more often than he should, but it's tough. Like there's some tough shit on this album. You look at the lyrics to a song like Dull Knives as well, you get a kind of real sense of him just being completely in constant agony psychologically, and you feel that, and that's tough, and I have a lot of sympathy for him, and I understand the desire to channel that into art like this. But when you listen to the songs themselves, it's all lost. It's all, and I don't even want to be like, you fucking failed, you guys suck, because they tried. I get that they tried, and I get that they have a niche.
Why did you learn your trade?
Yeah. Yeah, and they're doing their best, and it's just, It's just not good. I talked about the genuine psychological pain in a song like Dull Knives, and then I listened to that song, and it's unbearable. It's unfucking bearable to listen to. His screams and his pain and the way he communicates artistically, so much of what's genuine there just gets completely drowned out. I mean, thank you, Rick. We love to fucking take a shit on Rick Rubin, and I have to fucking join the choir this time as well, because he completely set. I mean, it's not like I'm sure they would have found a way for these songs to sound lifeless with or without him, but he certainly doesn't help matters. You know, with his brick-walled, brittle, bitter approach to the sound of this record. I mean, why on earth would you pick someone like Rubin to produce a record that's supposed to be your heartfelt, emotional, heart on sleeve? Let's strip away some of the bombast and some of the brainlessness album. It's such a non-committal attempt to really do the kind of thing that it wants to do. And it feels so torn between the artistic personality that Imagine Dragons have, like this, the commercial success and the style of music they've made to build that commercial success, and the heartfelt emotional direction they want to go here. Again, it's a typical tale of a big pop band, you know, caught in a crossroads and unable to really fully commit to a stylistic shift. And like, I'm getting all, maybe it's watching too much Mike the Snare, but I don't want to be mad at Dan Reynolds here. I feel for him. It's a tragic experience listening to this album, because you can tell how much pain and suffering is imbued here. But it's just a total artistic failure. And there's nothing that remotely, the thing you take away from this record as its most memorable aspect is that emotionality, but you don't take away any particular songs or songwriting or any of the particular impact of any of this particular music. You know what's funny is Monday, that song that you hate so much, Jay, it's probably my favorite thing on this album, which is so funny to say, because I agree, it's not a very good song at all.
It's repellent.
It's pretty repellent, yeah. But it's also like one of the few things that isn't really trying to be this thing where I just cringe because I'm like, dude, I get it, but also, hating this makes me feel bad. I can at least
that is exactly why it's my least favorite album of the year, is because you have to dance around all this shit and all these complicated feelings, and it's just like, look, Dan, I have sympathy for you because that shit sucks. I've been there. Lots of people I know have been there. It sucks for everybody. As an artist, I have zero sympathy for you. Yeah. Sorry, that's just how it works. You can make the most sincere and heartfelt work in your life. You can put everything into it. And if you construct it, if you don't know where to put the fucking pieces, it will still fall over if a stiff breeze comes over to kick it in the face. Yeah, I mean, and thus has happened with Imagine Dragons.
I mean, no matter how beautifully heartfelt you're trying to be, you still have written a song called No Time for Toxic People. with this,
half of this album, that like the inoffensive songs, those are what help me ground my hatred, is because like when they're not trying to be like emotional, they're just fucking awful.
Oh, and that's the thing that really sinks it as well. Like, forget all the emotional shit. Like, the arc of this album is hope at the end of it, but it manifests as like a positivity gang warped version of like, let's, you know, let the world's not so bad. You know, we need to like, you know, cut all this negativity out of our life and move along.
Anything but the positivity gang.
Yeah, and so that's where.
Tyler, you mentioned that. But at least there's hope. Of does that sound familiar? This prospect of an album perhaps being a bit empty-headed and, you know, being making a lot of false promises and then being all, well, positivity gang, Miss Musgraves.
Wish that I could put this game on pause.
I won't spend too long on this because, again, I'm essentially all these points I've already talked about in our review. But in case our viewers haven't watched that, I was really excited for this album. I had a lot of reasons to be excited as well. Like Golden Hour, while I wasn't head over heels in love with that album like some people were, it felt like this really exciting step forward for Casey in terms of taking her particular brand of like poppy country and really sort of like finding her own particular sound and niche within that. It's quite tasteful, quite pretty, very immaculately produced, which is it has to be remarked about on Golden Hour, how amazing that record sounds. And
The boy Sean Everett.
Yeah, exactly. And finds a really cool way of like using that sound and that kind of electronic sheen that she's adopted to craft some really sharp pop songs. And she did that amazingly on Golden Hour. It's a record that still holds up to this day. And in the run up to Starcrossed, this new record, there was a lot of press talk and interviews and shit where she talked about how ambitious she was going to be with this record, how she wanted to really make something that even leveled up further from Golden Hour and incorporated more ambitious musical styles and more musicians and like more genres as well, like a desire to like, you know, integrate influences far and wide, like from Paul Simon to Weezer to whoever, like to try and create this patchwork kind of masterpiece album that tracks the devastating tragic downfall of her marriage and all of the complicated emotions contained within that, you know, emotional turmoil. And then the record,
and it sounds like candy coated shit.
The record we get is so anonymous. It matches up with absolutely none of what was promised at all.
Well, have been called Golden Shower.
I can't do any better than that, I don't think.
Quit the podcast. It's over, guys. Pack it
Yeah,
up.
I mean, we've just peaked. No, but yeah, it's
Rock
just
over London.
it's just it's a total nothing record, and it completely fails to cash in on any of what makes Casey interesting as a personality, as an artist, as a figure within pop country. Like I mean, it veers totally off the country plot completely, which I think Casey's been planning to do anyway. But it reflected in the fact that this album's made very little impact anyway, commercially or critically. It's kind of just been received with a sigh. And I have this kind of conspiracy theory as well. I have no basis for this other than just the way this record sounds, that this is not finished. And it's not me just saying like, oh, it sounds unfinished, like we often say about bad records, but I genuinely believe.
I mean, it does, but you know.
Yeah, that's true. But I genuinely believe something must have happened. Like something must have gone wrong. Something must have stopped this from being finished, being made. Like something has to have prevented this, because there are moments on this record, like the closing track, for instance, which is an abomination of a cover, that genuinely sound like they were recorded, you know, in the style of Kanye West and Television. Like there's just genuine moments on this record where you sit in awe of how like completely yards of distance this misses the mark from. Like it just completely, you know, own goals itself on a regular basis.
Long for the fidelity of death consciousness.
I mean, yeah, and I mean the production's not even my biggest hang up, although it is disappointing. It's just how skeletal this thing is. It's just how the songs never seem to exist. It's how that concept, the arc of the tragic fallen romance, feels so half-baked, feels so barely realized, feels so skimped over. It feels like we're not getting a grand
Shakespeare, Tyler.
We're not getting Casey Musgrave's grand Romeo and Juliet rendering. We're getting Casey Musgrave's rendering of the Romeo and Juliet Cliff's Notes. It's just a total fucking shortcut of an album. And who wants that from an artist as big as Casey Musgraves in 2021, from an artist who we have as large of an expectation creatively as Casey Musgraves in 2021? Do better. Okay, one more. We have 3 more albums left, and the next one is the last one that we've already reviewed. So we'll probably keep this one brief as well. And number 3 worst album of the year is
Drop so hard like a rock, dad don't stop, so damn clean he a mop.
Of all the albums we reviewed formally this year, I believe this got the lowest average of all of our new release reviews.
Unsurprising.
And, you know, there's not much, it's still fairly fresh. The wound is still fairly fresh. There's not a lot that can really be said that hasn't already been said. But Jake, how would you sort of summarize what this album is for Limp Bizkit, what they're trying to do, if anything, and why it's such a failure.
There you go, Tyler. You actually had it right there. You said what they're trying to do, if anything. That's the problem. They aren't. They aren't trying to do anything. I'm glad I only have to speak about this broadly, is because broadly is the only way one can talk about an album such as this. Is that the reason that it's here is that, people might, shrug, roll their eyes a bit, just be like, oh, Limp Bizkit, fucking easy target, right? And then here's the thing, though. I said earlier, I'm done with making excuses for bad music, and that's true. But the thing is, if this album was bad in the way that you really expect a Limp Bizkit album to be, it would be like number 8 or number 9 on this list. It would probably be a little bit further back, and hell, maybe it might not even be on here at all, just because we could deem it to be so harmless that it's just not worth talking about. And in many respects, you might be able to label this like that, but no, it's just that it has a lack of being provocative, which is the only good quality Limp Bizkit have ever consistently had, is that they are provocative. They're trying to get a rise out of you. That's their entire bit, is that they're structuring their album to be as unfriendly and ugly and shitty as possible. And they're trying to do this like transgressive thing, but they're all a bunch of meat-headed idiots. So it ends up being shit like Chocolate Starfish or whatever the fuck. And then this is just this, it's so boringly bad. It's just them doing a bunch of ideas that feel like a shittier, lesser known metal band going through the motions. Like, this album is at its best when it's at its most annoying. And it's only at its most annoying maybe like 20% of the time, and the other 80% of the time you're just like, man, I'm reviewing the new Mastodon album this week. Sure wish I was giving that another go than listening to this. You just wish you were listening to anything else. There's nothing to dissect here. It's just like, yeah, Fred's lyrics, they're bad. His performances, yeah, they're bad. Like, all this shit is just, it's so fucking exhausting to just be like, there's no reason to dissect this 30 whatever minute long album just because nobody gave a shit. Wes Borland didn't fucking give a shit. He delivers 2 satisfactory riffs on this entire fucking thing, and that's just really all there is to it. There's nothing here. Like, I can't believe that of all the negative reviews we've made in our 1.5 year long tenure as a podcast, we managed to draw the ire of a Limp Bizkit fan on one of our reviews, where it was just like, Fred's the hardest working guy in the business. He's the only reason that his hustling was the only. Dude, this band isn't real. They don't care about the music they make. Their goal is to be annoying. You are wasting your life on a podcast that doesn't even get 300 views defending the honor of Fred Durst. Get help.
This band isn't real. That should be the name of their band. That should be the name of their live album. When I talked about Snacky Poo, the song in our worst songs of the year video, I said that I made a point that I think kind of is the best takeaway from this whole thing, which is that Limp Bizkit in 2021 is kind of an anachronism, right? They're out of time. They don't belong in the current era. This is their first album in 10 years, so it was easy to forget they ever even existed. And it was easier still to kind of relegate them permanently to the tool shed of the fucking early 2000s, where they both peaked and nadired at the same time. And yet, this still had potential. Like, this was gonna be their comeback album. Like, this album was in development basically almost all of the 10 years in which Limp Bizkit were radio silent. And for it to be so disappointing in the ways that Jake has discussed, of it being like not provocative, of it being not fascinating, of it essentially being like, I'm a dad now. Fred Durst being like, hey guys, I'm in my 40s and I'm trying to be cool. And
y'all still like you when I talk about poop.
Yeah. And it kind of makes you reflect, I guess, on what was ever enjoyable in the first place about Limp Bizkit. Before you all say, well, nothing, Tyler. There's stuff about Limp Bizkit's early work that I find music, art, whatever, that I find enjoyable. And I think that for their time, you can appreciate
oeuvre.
For their time, I think you can appreciate Limp Bizkit in a certain way. But the problem and the failure of Limp
Jamboree.
Bizkit Still Sucks is that, I mean, even with the provocation that title promised, like, fuck the haters, it doesn't deliver anything that will linger or that will hold up with their most entertaining trash fires. I mean, even August, who is someone who delights in a proper garbage fire of a song or a proper garbage fire of an album, would, I'm sure, tell you that this is just, disappointing by your standards.
I mean, completely. Like, there's just no point, really.
Okay, number 2, our second worst album of the year.
Oh boy.
So this is something we haven't really discussed in any level of detail on this podcast, aside from a few casual mentions. But Morgan, I want to throw over to you here. I know you're like, why? But it is your number 1 least favorite of the year. And so that's got to mean something. What is 21 Pilots Scaled and Icy? Why is it the worst album of the year?
It's the worst album of the year because I cannot answer your former question. I don't know what it is, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's whatever music. It's like air through an asshole. It's a fart. It's a fart of an album.
Well, you know what? I think
Who is this man?
I want to say something really quick, which is that I'm the only person who didn't put this album on their worst of the year list. And I think this album is pretty bad, but not terrible. But the reason why I think it deserves to be this high up on our worst albums of the year list, and it was for a while our number 1, it should be said, is that it neatly represents something I kind of already alluded to when I talked about Bo Burnham, which is quarantine music. The nature of music that has been made in the last year and a half to reflect the current era. We've talked about records on the show or art on this show that has done that well. And we've talked about a considerable amount of art on the show that has done that poorly. And I think that 21 Pilots Scaled and Icy, while it may not, in my opinion, be the worst example of a piece of art on this particular topic, reckoning this with this particular subject matter, in a lot of ways, it's one of the most disappointing, and it's a perfectly emblematic record to sit here and represent that, because you have this band, 21 Pilots, known for their tastelessness, known for their genre bending, admittedly a band, I was having a conversation with someone about this earlier today, a band where most people our age have a phase with 21 Pilots when they're 16, 17, 18. I had one. A number of my friends had one. I still look back on some of their music quite fondly. I'm not a hater. I'm not coming out here to fucking tear down their fucking parade. But I think that even by the standards of 21 Pilots music and by the standards of the music they enjoy, and I would say they made a good album with 2018's Trench. There's a lot of stuff to enjoy on that record.
Agree.
This is disappointing. And it's disappointing because despite the fact that you have this concept of the band, as the title suggests, scaling back and isolating themselves during the pandemic and making this more stripped back and simple and straightforward record, it feels like the most effortless and dry and kind of baffling thing that they've produced. I mean, they've made some strange songs. Like if you listen to a record like Blurry Face, which is not a good album really, but it's also an album that I have some begrudging kind of fondness for because of my teenage years. There's some baffling decisions on that record, but it's still more or less a cohesive sort of pop rock / hip hop album, more or less. Like it kind of holds together, incorporates some emo elements as well. Like it does their genre bending. Yeah, I mean, compared to this, it does their genre bending with a lot more refinement and clarity. And also the kind of like ska elements that were a little bit more pronounced on Trench as well. Like all of those things you get tastes of here and there on Scaled and Icy. but there's no sense of uniformity to it on this record. It is an utter patchwork mess of music. And I think what neatly shows that is the fact that this has several of my least favorite 21 Pilots songs on it. And it has my favorite 21 Pilots song on it, which is the closing track of this record, Redecorate, which feels like, again, this band, Tyler Joseph is occasionally able to do this. He's occasionally able to write something genuinely heartfelt, touch on a nerve that genuinely feels like moving, where he talks about like the imagining what the people who love him will have to do once he's dead. Like, what will they do with his shit? What will they do with his stuff? What will he leave behind? Of course, not just like the literal stuff, but the metaphorical baggage of legacy and stuff, and what you leave behind when you're gone. These are the kinds of existential questions you do kind of ask yourself in the middle of a pandemic, when there's a genuine chance you might die, before everything kind of starts to become normalized. It's a powerful song, and it's on the same record as Bounce Man.
Why is this even a quarantine album in the first place? Like, come on, you're rich.
Even an album.
It's the kind of like, it's the kind of thing that they do. When
if I were you, I would delete this.
It's a convenient excuse for an artist to like kind of put out some songs that will kind of not be taken as seriously, because like, oh, it's an in-between album. It's like, it's not one of their main records. It's kind of like, but yet it's treated like a main record. Like, it has these singles like Shy Away, which is, you know, on the upper end of this record by virtue of being mediocre as opposed to terrible. And you have, but then you have,
I agree to disagree.
Fair enough. Then you have deep cuts like Saturday, which actually I think that might have been a single as well, which, I mean,
stop doing Days of the Week songs 2021. Please stop. They're all bad. They're all
genuinely terrible. And the back stretch of this record, again, aside from that closer, which I do love, you have some really baffling, like,
Mulberry Street.
Sonically. Oh, Mulberry Street is also like one of the better songs in this record, and it's got the most annoying hook.
I'll take the Morgan Pass. Agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Plead the fifth.
But of course, Bounce Man, which I alluded to before, is just like the most kind of irritating sort of ska poppy bit of like faux reggae bullshit. No,
white people, please stop.
It's got all the energy of a Smash Mouth deep cut. Like
he's doing a Bob Marley impression. He's like, "No matter now," and it's like, please stop, please stop, Tyler.
Double bill it.
That's racist.
Double bill it with Roadman off of.
Whoa, man! Have you ever heard of non-white people? Check this shit out.
Yeah, and you have other deep cuts as well, like No Chances, which is just one of the worst sounding songs that this band have ever made. It's just dreck. I don't care for it at all. And I want to like another record these guys make. I do, because I do still have a lot of affection for some of their earlier stuff. But this sees them leaning into some of their worst impulses. And what this is probably going to sound like an alien language to you guys, but what I want to see is I want to see them make like a full-on emo record, because a lot of the music I enjoy the most from them is the really kind of like just garishly emotional shit that they do. Not that Redecorate is garish, but it is emotional. It's quite sensitive and nuanced.
I mean, it's something.
But I want to see them kind of, I don't want to see them doing this kind of Bounce Man, I let my old lady know shit. I don't want to see them doing these little like kind of pastiche bullshit kind of peppy poppy ukulele songs. I want to see them do more shit like Redecorate. I want to see
Tumblr core.
Yeah. Anyway, that's that really.
I think the best way to put this in the ground is to say that basically every song on here could conceivably have a music video directed by Mick G.
Oof. God damn. But you know what? One thing I will say is that for as much as we are enjoying shitting on Tyler Joseph and his band here, there is one person out there in the world, one person who hates Tyler Joseph more than we do.
I want to see the world, especially France. I want to see them Frenchies sing and dance.
Hobo Johnson this year have released not one, but 2 albums that rank among the worst music I've ever heard. I'm going to be honest with you here. At present, Hobo Johnson, The Revenge of Hobo Johnson is probably the worst album I've ever heard.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And it's not like in a ceremonial way, like, oh, this is obviously the worst album I ever heard. I was just like looking at my lowest ratings. I was thinking about it and I was like, this one just sucks the most. Like it just has the highest ratio of like, or the thinnest ratio of like bad to anything remotely approaching positive. Like there's no upside. There's no like threat. Like even with Sear, when we were like, oh, you know, it had that one single where the synth sounded kind of cool, or there was a bit of a pulse, or kind of like, yeah. This has not even like the slightest bit of redeeming quality whatsoever.
There is one thing that this album has, and it's that the first song is better than everything else.
I mean,
it's not a good song. Let me get that dead clear. It's not even an okay song. It's a shit song.
It's a song about fucking Satan.
It's a song about having sex with El Diablo himself. And this is the best piece of music man produced in the year of our Lord 2021. And it is terrible. That this is his peak, and it is shit. Hobo Johnson is horrendous. He is a fucking awful musician, and a lot of that boils down to, on these two albums, is contempt. Hobo Johnson is terrible because he has a contempt for humanity, for music, for everything in the universe. There is nothing he seems to take joy in. It's pure, disgusting, miserable hatred for everything. And as a result, we get an album that does not try. Hobo Johnson whines on these albums about everything from, I'd be such a shitty father, boo-hoo. Boo-hoo.
I poop my pants and I don't know how to wipe.
Boo-hoo. Animal Farm was a documentary. Boo-hoo.
Literally, though. Literally.
Yes.
You're not even like caricaturing
Jeff
him.
Bezos spelled wrong.
Look.
This isn't even a caricature. I hate therapy. Therapy's for fucking dick suckers.
I want to see the world. In my head, and I can't get it out, and I'm gonna put a fucking 12 gauge in my brain. This is the thing. What is the appeal of listening to a fucking barely post-pubescent kid shit his pants with a microphone and talk about how sensitive he is, while he talks about how much girls don't like him? Like, this is the thing. It's not a new shtick for Hobo. He's been around the block. He's put out some previous records. He's put out a couple of songs I do quite like on his 2019 record, The Fall of Hobo Johnson. But for the most part, his music almost universally is the most loathsome, narcissistic, and look, he gets lumped in with incel culture a lot. I can't really comment on that. It certainly comes out in a lot of the music that he sings about, because he certainly doesn't seem to have very much respect for the people in his life that he loves. Or weirdly, he professes to have this genuine caring for them that's tearing him apart because of how fucked up he is. And look, the thing that really makes this abominable is I know people like Hobo Johnson. I know people who do this kind of shit. People who genuinely do, and I believe Hobo genuinely does care about his family and shit and how they feel and shit. But that doesn't make it any better when people in real life do genuinely care about people that they love, but continue to hurt them, but continue to flagellate themselves in front of them, but continue to make their life a living hell, but continue to drag them down with their suffering, right? If there's one thing that societally we've gotten better at kind of understanding and acknowledging with regard to relationships in the last few years, it's that you're not obligated to share in the suffering of someone just because you're in a relationship with them. You have a right to your own freedom from that. And you're not obligated to, you know, have to fucking make every little shitty feeling they have all better and bandage all their boo-boos. Like, Hobo Johnson makes music exclusively about how much he hates himself, how much he's a piece of shit, and how much his hatred of himself and his piece of shit behavior is dragging down the lives of the people that he loves. And he acts as though there's something, anything significant or meaningful about expressing that. He acts as though the catharsis of expressing that, or the actualization of putting pen to paper and talking about the ways in which he's been a piece of shit to his girlfriend, to his lovers, to his mum, to his parents. He acts as though that is some kind of penance. He flagellates himself, he puts himself up, he plays the martyr so much. And what really, and this has always been his shtick since day one, what really makes the revenge of Hobo Johnson particularly low is that he strips away anything remotely approaching an interesting musical idea through which these musings might get fucking transfused or diluted into this stripped down, low effort, fucking nightmare of an album where Hobo,
I mean,
look, I get the thing is
MIDI
like,
synths would have been a better backing instrumentation than what we have, because at least those might have had a grain of color in them, a grain of interest in them somewhere.
I get that.
I looked up this album on Rate Your Music while I was taking a fat shit right now, which seems apt.
More than you
And
know.
I looked at the Rate Your Music page, and the biggest descriptor, the biggest genre descriptor for The Revenge of Hobo Johnson was anti-folk. And I looked down on the track list, and the first track name was Anton LaVey. So if I could direct your all's attention to the document here for a second, and there you go.
Morgan has just put this album at number one on his worst albums of the year list without having heard it. And you know what? Normally the fucking obsessive compulsive part of my brain would hate people for doing that. But I know for a fact you would agree if you listen to this. And I know you're never going to listen to this.
Oh my,
if you listen to this, Morgan, I would be so disappointed in you. I would be so upset.
Don't worry, buddy.
Look,
legitimately,
there is not a person in this world I can imagine liking this less than Morgan.
And let me
that's beautiful.
Let me paint you a little picture here. Like, I get in the current year, like we're post AJJ at this point. Like we've had a lot of kind of folk music where the singer can't sing, and it's all about kind of like bleeding heart emotionality, right? And poetry and all that kind of shit, right? And I get
I'll
that has a
stab your fucking bleeding heart. How about
and I get that has an appeal for certain people. I get Hobo has an audience. I'm saying Hobo like it's his real name. I get that Hobo Johnson.
Frank Lopez Jr.
Frank Lopez, that's what I meant to say. My brain is
I mean, of course.
I get that Frank Lopez style has an appeal to people, but genuinely, like, this man has the worst voice in the world. He is straining it on this album. He's not making any attempt. Like, if you listen to I Want to See the World and you don't want to put fucking bamboo splinters under your fingernails, then I want to fucking cut your heart out and put it in my body, because I need to have whatever energy you have.
It is nails on a chalkboard and then grinded down on with sandpaper levels of just hoarse and terrible. And there's a part of me that feels fundamentally disgusted listening to him singing.
Yeah, I mean, there's genuine like personal shopper vibes, and I'm laying here dead on my couch with Facebook and Google having their tubes in my mouth as they generally feed me my ads for the day. Like, it's some real like Jesus Christ, like post-idiocracy fake what the fuck is satire bullshit.
I can't log off.
And then you have I mean, it's barely even worth commenting on, but song 9, The Government's Not Great.
That, I mean, what else needs to be said from that?
It's funny because like this is like where he brings the album full circle, where he kind of like comments on or references previous songs on the record, like he's in the fucking Wonder Years, and and this is the song where, as I led off this segment talking about how he hates Tyler Joseph of 21 Pilots more than us. This is the song where he begs to tour with them so he can rip out their eyes. Like there's something genuinely awkward about that moment in the song where he literally just loses his mind and goes on this tirade about wanting to fucking murder them. And whereas I think other artists could find a genuine kind of gravity in the moment on this song where he screams, "You buy this soap, fucker, and rub it on your body." When he does it, it doesn't feel like a kind of consumerist, sharp, fucking angry attack. It feels like he's having a psychotic break and we need to get him back inside the care home as quickly as possible. And did he take his meds? I don't think he's been taking his meds. And all of that said, I don't want to be that guy who's like being a dick to the dude who's mentally ill, because I don't hate Hobo Johnson as a person. I don't respect him. I worry for him. I don't wish him harm, but I would like for him to stop making music, because he seems to be hitting with the kind of increasingly sort of like minimal style of like musicality or whatever. He seems to be trying to fashion himself as a kind of Daniel Johnston type figure. Again, I'm not saying that's what he's actively trying to do. He hasn't said he's trying to do that. That's just kind of how I perceive this. And it's so skin crawling that it's difficult for me to imagine anything that would be more uncomfortable, more loathsome, more just genuinely upsetting than this. And that's not even to talk about the second album he put out this year. The Hobo Johnson alienates his fan base with Jake. I know you listened to this record and put it on your list. What the fuck happened there?
It's so great because this is a perfect, flawless encapsulation of every single record that we've talked about on this list. Every single core problem that all those records have had, these two records have too. The bizarre, low effort minimalism and unfinished sloppiness of something like Casey Musgrave's album. We have the sort of attempts at emotional honesty that just make you feel fucking uncomfortable, like on Mercury Act 1. You have you can sit here and draw the parallels all day. And the Hobo Johnson alienates his fan base is most analogous to me is to the Limp Bizkit album, is because this album purely exists to be hated. This is the objective of the album. It is him attempting to be provocative. And just like the Limp Bizkit album, I hate this and think it's terrible because it is not provocative, because it fails at being annoying. Listen to this. This is 21 minutes long. This is a 21-minute long album, 8 songs. The second song is called All I See Is Poop. And imagine in your head, just generate it with whatever mechanism you have in your brain to what a Hobo Johnson song called All I See Is Poop sounds like. Congratulations. If you thought that it was 5 minutes of a very minimal plinky plonk beat and him going, all I see is poop, literally just poop, smells like a zoo, something vaguely sexist. Like it's just that line after line after line after line. There's something that says, what's the AQI of this bong rip? Drake diss in parentheses. Sorry, I can't look you in the eyes. This is what Tyler was getting at. It's just, he projects the most loathsome human being on planet Earth. And the thing is that I don't care if this is a persona or an artistic thing, or if this is actually him, because either way, it doesn't matter if it's just, oh, this is just because this is what people like him hide behind, is that they're like, it's to make a statement. Actually, I'm being ironic. Actually, it's like, you are the worst kind of artist in that nothing you do means anything. You are a solipsistic fool. You do nothing but aim and stab at nothing. You want people to hate you because it's all you know, because you are pathetic. You do this because you think you're good at it and you wallow in it. And you're a giant piece of shit rolling downhill and you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And congratulations, you've done it. You've reached the apex of shit, and I don't care about you. You don't bother me. You don't annoy me. You do have the most annoying voice in the world, but when I'm not listening to your music, I don't care. I don't care. I would rather listen to a 3-split LP between like Tones and I, the pitched up AJR vocalist, and fucking the guy from Imagine Dragons. I would listen to a triple album of them doing songs that are all 5-minute long progressive rock songs where I have to hear each of them scratch against my prefrontal cortex. Then I would give a single shit about anything this man says or does.
From here on out, no more Hobo Johnson in any form.
No.
Yes.
Moratorium on Hobo.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Hobatorium.
That's the worst thing. It's just like,
Man,
this is
you know
just-
what? You know what's
we're
gonna
putting
be
you in the
great
ground.
if we get
No
a
more.
week where like Smashing Pumpkins and Hobo Johnson release an album.
No.
Shut up.
It's just the episode just comes on and it's just fucking like my feet swinging from the top of the rafters in my room.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a heroin needle in my arm. August has no head.
Just a little blood spurt and Tyler's just
Ty-
sitting
Ty-
there like rocking
Ty-
back and forth.
And foam starts coming out of his mouth because he bit the cyanide capsule.
So that is our list of the worst albums of 2021. And let us know in the comments below what you think of our list. What were your least favorite albums of the year? Were there any big hitters that you think we missed out on? We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Genuinely, it does mean a lot to us. Every comment we get helps. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like as well. That really helps us a lot too. If you want to support us and you're not already and you've already subscribed, then you can hit the join button as well. And for just $1 a month, you can chuck some money our way and then helps us to do what we do. And we'll throw some perks back your way as well. I'm going to be increasing those in the new year as well. That's enough negative energy. We're going to be back in 2 days' time with our best songs of the year list. And then 2 days after that with our best albums of the year list. And those are going to be some really fun videos. So please stick around. You do not want to miss those. But of course, as we have to do at the end of the year, we have to bury the worst of the worst and put it underground. And I think we've done that. And I think we're all closer and stronger as people. August, why don't you let us go?
What was that?
All right. As always, everyone. Rock over London, rock on Chicago, California Milk Processor Board. Got milk?